man. Sorry it's a little late. I just got back from a run.
Did you now? Welcome back. It's December 5th, the year 2023. Welcome aboard, everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 733.
Yeah, 733.
We are back. You're back in on the lake. Frozen lake, I would have to imagine.
Yeah, I'm having plunge withdrawals, man.
I was about to ask if you'd like chiseled out a little slot for you.
No, I don't have a chainsaw. I don't know what to do about that right now.
But, I mean, can't you just,
you can't.
You just need to get. You can't. You can't get a tub even sit outside. I guess it'll freeze overnight.
Well, yeah, I got a tub, but I haven't. It's in the garage. I haven't done it yet because I'm leaving again this weekend. So I just don't want to mess with, water shit.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. But yeah, it's cold times up there. We're back. We had run camp last week. You're back on the lake. I'm back here in Overland Park. It's a beautiful sunny day, but it's nice to be back in the office, back in the swing of things. Obviously, a long last month of November with traveling. I think I was in my own bed at home like less than a week of November with Mimi passing away and Thanksgiving and the run camp. But yeah, it was great to be gone and do things, but it was obviously some hard times as well. But it's very nice to be back in the groove of things, and looking forward to seeing you here this weekend. Spend some more quality time. It's your first time tuning in today. Welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have quite a lot of options in Triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general terms of valuables. We appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We do race recaps and also a lot of race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through in life, not just as human beings, but also as coaches and athletes ourselves. Mike and I also talk frequently about what our own athletes are going through. We work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner-level athletes looking at the very first 5K or sprint triathlon, all the way up through elite-level amateurs trying to get back to world championships, and everyone in between from all over the globe. And we use the feedback loop we have with them and training peaks, emails, text messages, and the like to drive the discussion of the day. We also like to utilize our Facebook group like we did last week. You can search that, Crushing Iron Group. Answer multiple question. We'll let you right in. Awesome people, fantastic community, solid resource in a sport that can be way overcomplicated and confusing. It is a solid environment and atmosphere to ask questions and get great actionable feedback from a variety of individuals. And we go in there about once a month or every 4 to 6 weeks and do a Q&A. That is it. We have no sponsors. We have no ads, but we do have an agenda. And that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yeah, and I feel happy and healthy about this weekend. I mean, you just talked about a sport that's overcomplicated. And we can simplify that big time by just saying, go do it. Training or no training. Man, we hit some, we were talking about, I hit some dark places out there in that this weekend, but I mean, it was a blast. The whole thing was unbelievably fun, but wow, what a challenge.
Yeah, I know. We'll get to that here in a minute. It's like we always like to talk about our camps when we come back from, because it really just is like a really enriching, challenging, and enlightening experience for you and I as coaches, but also, as athletes ourselves, especially at run camp, we're able to get out there and challenge ourselves and do things with the athletes, and they get to see us out in our own element and also struggling from time to time. But yeah, we had I think about 25. We do 2 run camps a year out in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee. You park on Tuesday, don't leave till Sunday. We got food catered in. Another big shout out to Chad Bayer, an athlete who took over the food this year, and it was unbelievable. He took care of everyone's. The people had food allergies, make sure we had gluten-free stuff, made sure things were separate, had meals on time. Most often they were meals that were early. It was just awesome. I mean, it's the outside of being that physically fit. I felt like what a professional athlete probably feels like.
Yeah, it was kind of pampering, man.
Yeah, it's total pampering. Like we didn't have to go anywhere. Everything we needed was on site. Somebody's cooking your food for you. A lot of times somebody's cleaning up for you. You got Normatec boots, you got Theraguns, you got places to relax, you got hard, challenging. I mean, yeah, it was, and you're totally disconnected from. I mean, obviously it's like semi work for you and I, but for everyone else, it's we got limited you got Wi-Fi so you can work if you really, really want to or have to. But other than that, it's like, it's kind of nice to be unreachable. And if you're married, you don't have to, worry about some of the relationship stresses that come, with just being in a relationship. You got to have, if you're a parent, you're not going to have kids. But it was you feel pampered. And so it was a really interesting experience. It always is. And we have another camp in February with 40 athletes coming, but it's a great time and challenging train, but beautiful. But this year, in the past, we've kind of done structured workouts, and this year we did a little bit something different. We did kind of our own, what we called the 5-star, because the place we go is called 5-star retreat, and it's called the 5-star. We had 5-star challenge and 5-star ultra challenge, and it was kind of a stage race format. You had the challenge, which was a 4-day event, if you will. They did a 1 mile, then 5K, then 10K, then half marathon, and the ultra was the 5K on day one, and then you did a 10K, half marathon, trail marathon. And those distances are difficult on their own individually, and not just individually, but also on like friendly terrain, right? Like pancake flat asphalt or greenways, whatever it is you live. But these were on very technical trails, gravel, packed dirt. You got roots some places, rocks. You got uneasy footing. We did one night run, which I thought was honestly, I think, one of my favorite runs. It sure as hell beat the last day, but I think it was because it was so much shorter. I liked it. I liked running at night, being out there in the middle of nowhere with your buddies, and I think it's just a cool experience. We did that, and again, like those are hard distances, especially the last 2 days on their own. But when you combine them day after day after day after day, and then you look at the elevation, and you and I both did the ultra, and I think I clocked in over 55 miles for the week, and then over 10,000 feet of climbing on for the 4-day stage race. And it rained a little bit on and off on Friday and Saturday, so it made things a little more challenging. Your footing was a little bit slippery. You got it was really challenging. And I thought, first and foremost, I was incredibly impressed with the athletes and how much they persevered and pressed through. And there wasn't it's just kind of funny, right? How, you and I are obviously both coaches, and we listen to athletes. We get text messages, phone calls, emails. A lot of time we read in Training Peaks just about how much we can find things to complain about. Just little things. Forgot my goggles, or my straps not work, or my shoes are too tight. And what I noticed at camp was how little to, if any, complaining there was.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if it was that everybody had just, because I do, and I know we'll talk about this in a minute, but I think we've gotten, in society and the way things are catered to us and the way things are marketed, everything's about making life easier. How can we make things easier on everybody? We don't need to have cuts for sports. Let's just accept everybody. We're not giving out trophies to the champion. We're giving out a trophy to everybody. You don't need to go grocery shop. We'll bring it to your doorstep. You don't need to go out to eat. We'll bring it to your doorstep. You don't have to go to, meet to office or go out to coffee. You can do a Zoom. You can do, everything is made to be easier. And so I think we've like lowered the barrier of complaining to an all-time low, to where it's just everyone complains so easily about everything. We really just forget how easy life is. And you looked at like the terrain and the shoe choices and how difficult. I think everyone just accepted, myself included, that it's going to be really, 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 really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's something to that when you just accept it. Like, and we talk about this a lot too with long distance racing, 70.3s and fulls or anything longer than that, is, people love to sugarcoat things. And, oh, you got this, you're going to crush it. But I think so much of being able to succeed and persevere and endure difficult, really hard, challenging things is honestly telling yourself, this is going to be really fucking hard. And I might not have it. It really doesn't matter what I've got with me, on a physical standpoint, or how much fitness I've got. If I'm not ready from the chin up, then it doesn't matter. And I thought that was, the mental and emotional piece of that before we get into the physical piece. I thought that was very interesting, how little, if any, complaining I heard from me. If they did, it was behind my back. But if they did, if any, and how people just not just accepted, but embraced how hard it was going to be. And I think it allowed people to thrive when Because when we look and expect, right, easy, then the smallest misdirection, the smallest, mishap or obstacle seems just monumentous. Oh God, how can I? It's like, and you get derailed so easily. But when you have this mentality of like, the chin down, hands up, like just be ready for anything, it's like you're just kind of flicking things off here and there, right? Like a normal, Monday through Friday workout that would have maybe derailed you because, oh my God, it rained outside. You know what? Not even rain. Coach Mike, I'm looking at my training. I know I've got a 40-minute run today, but it says kind of cloudy, maybe chance of rain, 35%, 45%. Should I switch my workouts? It's like you're looking for like, do I got to adjust, when it may or may not even happen. But when you got that attitude, like you're embracing and accepting and almost just kind of like waiting for like this really hard thing to happen, you're ready for it. And you just kind of plow through it. And I was very, very, very impressed.
Yeah. It's always amazing that I think attitude is contagious out there, and most of the people are there to do hard things and challenge themselves. And I think, we get into these, like the word challenge becomes kind of like softened or something, but like if you can embrace, because it really was a challenge. And I think I talked about it a couple of weeks ago, but in regard to doing the plunges and what I've been doing and how interestingly, some days I hope it's snowing or raining when I'm about to go out and run or something like that. It's just a weird twist that's kind of happened in my head. It's kind of like, it does make it harder, and it's not always about having a perfect day and going out and just crushing something. It's about really getting through the battle of it. And that's exactly what happened this weekend. And I think it almost crystallized even more because there's no way, I had no business doing, and you said the same thing. We had no business really doing what we did, especially because in previous camps, I've more or less finished with about a half marathon and kind of was ready to just throw in the towel after that. But then to do a half marathon on Friday and then come back with a marathon on Saturday with very, very limited run training going into this since I did the Wisconsin. But just to be able to that's really what clicked in my brain out there, was that it's sort of this stay in the moment thing that I always talk about that you had to do. And if you just don't get too far ahead of yourself and just keep grinding out there, it's amazing what can happen. It's to start that morning of the marathon. And I had an inkling to complain a little bit that you wanted to start it at 6 a.m. But you did. Yeah, I could see what you did. You started talking about 5 a.m. and I was
Wisconsin Marquette game.
Yeah, that's true. But you started with the 5 a.m. talk, and that was really kind of sizzling me underneath the surface. Yep. And then you were like, we'll move it back to 6. And it kind of felt like,
it looks like it's doing you a favor, right?
Yeah, we're starting
7 to 6. You go from, it's sales 101. Like, like I'm giving you something. Like, that's why you plan heavy heart stuff. You know what? Even if you have no intentions of doing it, you're like, you know what? Just chill. We got this, man. I said 5. Why don't we just do 6? 6 is good. Let's just do 6.
Felt like sleeping in, and
now you went from dreading 7 to embracing 6. And that's all it is from a mind standpoint. But no, I love what you said about being contagious, and I think listen, we've talked about this a lot, both on and off the air, and then when it comes to training and not training, is in my opinion, you are as tough and as resilient as the people that you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
And if you surround yourself with perfect Pats or complaining Karens, about everything, right, then that's all you're going to do. It's kind of like going out, with a group of friends and all they want to do is gossip and talk shit about people. Well, guess what? You're probably going to do the same thing. Mm. But if you surround yourself with people who are resilient, who are tough, who embrace things like that, who, aren't, looking for the easiest way out. And a lot of times it doesn't even have to be said. And that's one of my favorite pieces about camp, and especially this location, is you pass, we do these loops, and you always like end up passing someone or seeing someone on the trail, and whether you're the fastest guy there or the slowest person there, everybody is struggling. Everybody is uncomfortable. And a lot of times all you've got in you is like the little, the very weak, mid 5, not even a high 5, just the mid, the mid 5, great work, keep it up, and you just get, but it's because you're like, man, if they're still moving, I can keep moving. Right.
Yeah.
We had a single solitary person quit and mail it in. Everybody got it done. Some people went more than they signed up for. One person did their first ever open half marathon, and another person their first ever full marathon. And there was at least 4 to 5 people that I've talked to personally or read through in Training Peaks, and they just said, I don't really know how to put into words what I learned about myself this last weekend. And I would have never in my wildest dreams thought that I could do something like that on my own. And the interesting part about that, right, is that we look through life and relationships and friendships and the people you surround yourself with and your whatever you want to call it, your community or your tribe or your teammates or whatever it is that there wasn't a ton of like massive groups. A lot of people ran solo. A lot of people ran 1 to 2 or, end up splitting up. It was the collective, I'm not going to call it energy because I'm not sure a ton of us had a lot of energy to exude, but except for maybe Charlene with their cowbell, but it was like you got in a weird way, right? You get energy from seeing people overcome things, right? And it makes it's not like the megaphone or the guy on the course at the end of the race. It's like, you're crushing it. And you're like, dude, I don't feel like I'm crushing it. I just want you to, sometimes you just need to be told, you're going to make it. You're going to make it. Or isn't this hard, right? This does suck. And and I just think it's interesting, when you see, and like we had, one of your athletes, I believe, Jason, we had 2 guys from Alaska come, and Jason brought his son Bauer, who's got cerebral palsy. He was in a wheelchair. He was around us a lot for camp, and with meals. And I thought it was really special for me, and I know for a lot of athletes, they said so, to have him around. One, he's just a super hilarious kid, and awesome. But to see him and his dad honestly interact, and then to look at the challenges that he has and has had, and to hear about his story of how much the work that Jason and his family have put in to get him to where he is. I think he said at 3 he was a total quadriplegic, and now he's moving his wheelchair around and having conversations at dinner for like hours on hours and cracking jokes and talking about it's just, to me, it was remarkable. And it gave me a lot of not really energy maybe, but I think a perspective that, in looking at Bauer and then obviously his dad and that whole environment and it's just like, man, like what they may or may not go through on a day-to-day basis, or how hard it is to just do something like, that might seem small to me, it can seem very challenging to them, kind of puts things in perspective for yourself, and how easily we can complain and take a step back and honestly take a lot of things for granted in life. So I thought that was also a very special piece, and I loved having him around. But it wasn't a lot of there was no directness, which I think is a lot of life right now with social media, and you can read things, and you and I always joke about the motivational quotes on Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is that come over and over and over again. It's like it just feels it loses its luster, right? Like when you see him every day, you're like, this isn't getting me pumped up because I see the same shit every day from the same people. And I say this to my athletes all the time. Like, if I was a rah, you crushed it, you're the best coach, you're the best athlete ever, and I said it every day, eventually it would mean nothing, because it loses its impact because you say it all the time, right? But when you're around people like we were this weekend, not just people, but people who were willing to push themselves beyond physically, not just physically what they thought what they could do, because in order to do things physically beyond what you thought, you have to be able to go to a place mentally and emotionally you've never been before. And that doesn't come with words, right? Or megaphones or signs or cheerleading. It comes straight from within. It comes from this really dark, sometimes lonely place that you can only tap into. No one else can tap into. But when you see people and you can see the look in their eyes, but they're already tapping into it. In a way, to me, it's encouraging. Just like you see other people in life that are going through really, really, really hard times and challenging experiences, and to see them make it through, it gives you strength, I think, to be like, man, like that shit, or almost like to internally challenge yourself, almost in a way of kind of cracking the whip on yourself. Like, man, I got way more in me than I think, and I got to get my shit together.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it when we were handing out medals, but I don't know. I was out there for a couple loops with Matt, and then kind of went off on my own. And I feel like I didn't really see many people for the whole second loops, and you're really out there by yourself.
I saw you but one time over 5 hours.
Yeah, it's there's a couple times I'm like, am I? It's sort of like. Yeah, right course. Did everybody already finish? You start hallucinating and getting weird about that. But man, you're really in your own head, and that, man, I think that's how you learn it. I've always kind of had this attitude about just go get it done. We can stress out about races and but we have so much more inside us. I put to my athletes, I'm like, what, that kind of weekend makes me always ask, what are we leaving on the table? Because it's just so remarkable to me. I mean, that that marathon, which was ridiculously difficult with like you said, the footing and the leaves and the elevation and the rain and the darkness of it all. But, to know that, like coming off Wisconsin, I mean, it wasn't even that much longer than my marathon out there. So I kept trying to think, because I've always felt like I leave a little bit on the table in the marathon, but it's so painful. And how do you get through that? And that's all I kept thinking about there was this is just, toughness training. It wasn't anything to do with the time or anything like that. It was just like, how am I going to find a different place? Or what can I do to get through those struggles? Because you're out there in an Ironman marathon and everybody does it. Most people do it, I should say. Yeah, I'm just going to walk a while or whatever the case may be. And so there was certainly places out on that course where walking was about the only option. So I found myself really kind of looking forward to those, even though you're going up like, ridiculous grade on slippery mud and gravel. But it was kind of the break, but I kept trying to force myself to run the run parts and really kind of, build sort of a callus about that and figure out how to get through it. So, like the second, or I guess it was the third loop, I was really out there sort of in no man's land by myself. And then Bauer's dad, Jason, came along and he kind of caught up and he was looking strong and he passed me. And, I don't want to say I was going to quit, but that thought kept crossing my mind. I was like, what are you doing? You have no business running this kind of thing. And you don't want to get hurt and blah, blah, blah. And all those thoughts kept going through. And then I saw him, he kind of went up ahead of me on that real steep hill behind the lodge. And I was just watching him run away from me. And it just reminded me of Bauer, and he's going up and, he's going to get a hand bike and he's going to go do Wisconsin with that. It's like, what? I mean, he inspired me, man. Like that. It was a great weekend with him, and he is a great kid, and his dad is about as good as you're going to get. But you're right though, because it's living experiences and sticking your nose into those dark places or those new experiences that really matter. It isn't the quotes, man. I mean, you got me on that, man, because like it's just how often we see that and how often we talked about that, and it's like, man, you just got to do it. You just got to go do stuff and feel them, and that's really the learning part of life, is getting into those headspaces by yourself and meeting people. And the thing about the attitudes out there is that, it's just remarkable to me that everybody just kind of shows up at whatever time in the morning and they're all ready and kind of getting loose and stretching, and then they just go off and do it, and they keep doing it. And we kept doing it for hours and hours and hours. And then, I have to talk about the group plunges, man. We started the first day. Normally it's like you do it after the long run, and everybody started doing it, and we we had the biggest group ever, I think, on the first day. And people were just kind of in, and it's not easy to walk in that cold water, man. And we just went in there, and more people got into it, and they were just doing stuff, without, back in the past. It's interesting because I've watched this over the years, and, I kind of started encouraging the plunge years ago when we'd go in that last day. And then this time it was sort of like people were coming up to me going, "When we plunging, man?" And it was, it's just interesting to see the attitude shift. And I think all those little things add up. And I'm sure most people walked away from that camp thinking, wow, I got more in me. And maybe they have, chipped off another piece of rust and got that toughness meter a little higher or whatever. And it's just so cool to see that, because it does take a long time sometimes in this sport. And I always think people have more in them, including me. And I think we have to see it to believe it.
You love what you said about no business. And that was like one of my favorite quotes from Molly Seidel, the U.S. Marathon woman who got a medal in the Olympics. And she said, "I love sticking my nose where it doesn't belong." Mm. And I think that, like, that mentality, it's like, I don't know. Like, I think triathlon is a weird space, right? A lot of people exude this, elitist, or what do you do? Or you don't do Ironmans. You're not a triathlete. It can be a little too elitist and off-putting, to be honest, to a lot of people. And, because it is so much about the equipment and what you look like and how much money you can, how much money do you have? Like, can you afford wheels? Can you afford a bike? If you don't, you're going to look slow. Or what kind of wetsuit do you have? It's way too much based on, your bank account, right? Even the World Championships now are a lot about what your bank account is, because it's so freaking expensive. But when you see people, when you have an experience like that, like the Saturday run for me, I'm not going to call it religious, but it was somewhat of a spiritual experience.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because I haven't been to a dark place like that in a long time, a very long time. And I think, and I wrote a little bit about it in my weekly email. You did the 5K, because of course, knowing what you got the last day, knowing that you're not prepared for even really the marathon or the half marathon, but doing back to back, you kind of take the days easy, which I think was great. But I also made the course, so I know it. I knew how bad it was going to suck. Mm-hmm. And I was running with Mark Hagan, who I usually run with, and it's for a guy who doesn't race as much anymore. It's interesting to like go through all the things you tell people you're going to go through, because it's been a while for me. But I'm like, yeah, you're going to feel like shit. You're going to feel great. You're going to feel like shit. You're going to feel great. Then we'll just see what you end up on. It's kind of like spinning a wheel. And I felt good for the first 8-9 miles, and then I felt awful on like the flattest part, like around the pond. I was like, this feels terrible. I was like, this is gonna be the longest last 16 miles of my life. And then we did a loop, came back, and I went extra around the pond because I felt awesome. It's probably where I burnt my biscuits. I didn't rein it in, and then around mile 20. We're coming up from behind the lodge, that we've now called the Winston Churchill, that hill right there behind the church. And there's a brutal climb that seems like forever. And like so brutal, we've thought about tying one of those thick ropes to the top tree and like just tossing the rope down to give people some, a little bit of help getting up, especially with how slippery it was. And Mark looks over at me and he goes, "How you doing, man?" I said, "I'm hurting bad." And as Mark would do, and I would do to him, he left me. He just kind of like ran on into the distance, and I saw him run up to the power line, and which is fine. I wouldn't have wanted him to stay, and nor would I have stayed for him. It was kind of like an unspoken rule we have. We've done a lot of races together like that, but then I that was the first time in a long time. I knew a lot of it was fitness and training, but also a lot of it was nutrition based. I just totally, like, 100% whiffed on my nutrition, just totally whiffed on it. And you knew with like 4 or 5 miles left, like, you're not going to get it back. And I just remember thinking, like, this is going to be the longest hour. And I'm feeling uneasy, I'm moving a little bit more east to west than I probably should be, and you're having to also, which makes it so much harder, right? Because the terrain is so difficult that if you make a wrong step in some places, like it's not going to feel very good.
Mm.
So you have to stay. I mean, trail running in general, you have to stay in the moment. The second you look up to soak things in, you're going to fall face first, right? But then when you take like that, you're really struggling. Like you talk about like staying in the moment and staying present and not. We rarely ever embrace tough times anymore. We just disassociate, right? Pick up a phone, turn on a show, look through social media. We disassociate. It is so challenging and hard to stay present for longer than a couple minutes these days. Right, with everything you have access to, or your phone is dinging and texting and emails and phone calls and messages and alerts and likes and notifications. It's like it's fucking nonstop. Like you don't ever have a chance to work through things or to think about the fact that, running with Mark's like running with you. Like we're out there for 5 hours, we might say an average of 3 words per hour, maybe. Maybe it's just like, but to think how long that was with no phone, no music, just you. In your own head, making decisions, having conversations, working through things. It's a long, long time to do that. And I remember I came up the power line and then made my way down. And I was just thinking to myself, you are not going to walk the downhills. You are not going to walk the flats. You just get one foot in front of the other, no matter how bad it hurts. And if you've done trail running or any kind of hilly courses, the last bit of your race, it's the downhills that hurt the most because it's just hard. And I get done I'm hitting the gravel. I'm like, all right, I got 2 more big hills to go. I got the one across the creek, and then the gravel. Come back up home, and I'm done. And I look out in the distance, and I see Larkin and Emily, and I think they legit look concerned. And they told me so after we got done. They were like, "You looked really, really, really bad." I was like, "Well, thanks. I felt every bit of it." And I turn back around and you're going to be alone, which I also think is something that we lose, the ability to be self-reliant, that we rely so much on other things or external motivation or music or software or other people or cheerleading. Same thing with Ironman, right? No matter how great the spectator support is, there are always pieces and stretches on course where it's lonely and there's nobody else out there except you, and you're the only person you can rely on. And I think that's scary for people, right? Because we're so used to being able to, and I think it's great to be able to lean on people and ask for help. I encourage, I think it's fantastic, but you learn more about yourself by working through and being alone and not having a crutch or a safety net or a reset button than you will doing anything else. And we rarely do stuff like that to ourselves. Again, I made my way across the creek and then came up that last freaking climb. And it's honestly, a lot of it was hard because I'm not in the shape that I've been in the past. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, I used to run up this whole damn thing. And now I'm like barely trying to make it up this hike. And then you go down the downhill and you're like, I'm almost there. And I just told you before we went on air, is I remember there was a spot before I came down like the last, I don't know, maybe 1/10 of a mile on the other side of the creek. And I thought to myself, if I go down, how long is it going to be for someone to find me? And if they do find me, are they going to have enough energy to stop and do anything with me? And because you're in it wasn't like, I was going to die. Like it wasn't anything like severe like that, but you just know you're in a bad spot. You're bad spot nutritionally, you're bad spot hydration wise. Your legs are screaming at you. And still, I was proud of myself because there was that, once you come down the backside of the creek, there's a before you get to the creek, there's a semi-flat, not really flat, but semi-flat stretch of rollers. And no one's around. No one can hear you. No one's cheering for you. You're not going for a PR. You're not going for a podium. No one is there to cheer you. No one is there to convince you to do anything, but no one's also telling you it's okay to stop and walk. And no one's also telling you to push you to run. And I just remember telling myself, like, you are not walking this. I know it hurts. I know it sucks and it's really uncomfortable, but we're not walking here. Now, was my shuffle run the equivalent of a marathon speed walker? Probably not. It was probably slower than that. But it wasn't about the result or the increase in speed, right? It was just about making a decision to work through it and try to tough it out as best I could. Because I wasn't getting anything. I wasn't going to catch Mark in front of me. I wasn't going to get caught from the person behind me. It from a time standpoint in a race or a completion, it was irrelevant. But to me, it mattered because it was one of those, we talk a lot about micro decisions and choices that we make and how that sticks with you. I could have walked the whole rest of the thing. And it was so hard, everyone would have accepted it. Don't blame me. That was terrible, but I didn't. Made my way back, shuffled some more, and then got to the last, gravel hill. And I had nothing left. And I always joke about like the red line, the red carpet finish speed people have. There was no kick. I had no final kick. I was happy to look over the top of the hill and see the finish line and see the table of food and the people that had finished. And I was done. It was one of the hardest. You can call it a race if you want to. We got medals that are pretty awesome. I'll post a picture about that because someone did a great job designing those. We had a belt buckle for the ultra and a medal for the challenge. And it was one of the hardest experiences I've ever gone through, just from how much pain I was in and how uncomfortable it was, and then doing it alone. But in a way, it was honestly, it outside of the fact that my quads are still incredibly sore, it was kind of soothing. And I don't know if that makes sense, to most people or having been there, but it was soothing in a way to work through every thought and emotion you could possibly have, good, bad, indifferent, and do it all on your own. And know you were doing something really, really hard and really, really challenging. And it was also motivating to get better and do better, for the next time we go down there in February. And, so it was as painful as it was, it was kind of soothing because if you go back and you think about, again, like how long people are usually away from if I told you like in the middle of a work day, I said, I'm going to take your phone away and music for 5 hours, people would have a panic attack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Straight panic attack. They would freak out. And you're out there not only, totally disconnected from everything, but it's just you, your thoughts, your emotions, and that, like I call it, that very dark place that you have to go to, because to me, that's the most silent place that you have. It's the farthest place away from all the noise of life, and it's the only place you can really find quiet and release, any kind of anxiety or apprehension or self-doubt. Because at the core, it's just you, right? It's like the unfiltered, almost like untouched version of yourself without the other stuff that gets in the way and the other stressors in life and anxieties in life and, thinking about speed and expectations and how am I going to do and how's this going to look? It's just like, it's like mano a mano, like you against against like in the rawest form. And we just do so very little of that anymore. That I think it was, and I know we're making this like this isn't an advertisement, right, for how quick and great the running is at Run Camp, but I will tell you that everybody that did it, I know it was challenging, but talked just about that experience and how proud they were of it. Think about things like, that was the toughest thing I've ever done. You did it, like the feather in your cap, the confidence boost, not just in training. But in life, like I can do hard things. Like I really can. And like you said before, like it really does make you wonder, how much am I leaving on the table? And I think that's something that, you and I've talked about a lot, like how, so many, all of us really, grossly underachieve, in life, in every aspect of life. And then you see these few individuals, right, that you know, they squeeze every ounce of themselves out of every aspect of life. And generally speaking, you you kind of resent them for it, right? Because you're jealous. You're like, God, you're like, why do they keep doing it? Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? That's so stupid. Or what? I've seen it enough. And it's not because they're being too showboaty. It's because it kind of offend yourself, because you're like, that could be me. I just haven't made the choices to do it. I haven't been tough enough to do it. I haven't found that within me. But it is like any kind of, experience like that you can find, whether it's at a camp or a race, an event, or a self-supported, endeavor. Like I think it's just really important to put ourselves in those, situations, because I think it just does so many good things for us. While you might feel physically beaten down, during it, afterwards, mentally and emotionally, I think it's incredibly uplifting.
There's no doubt. And I mean, you kind of were talking a little bit about nutrition and how you botched it and everything. And I think I did too, probably, but I have this thing, and I think I ran the half the day before on water with one goop or one gel. And it felt pretty awesome. I just did it as an experiment just to see how far, because I don't know. Sometimes I think about things, and, when I do my Ironman races and I'm in my marathon, and, and I'm trying to eat everything under the sun and figure it all out and whatever. And then, but I'm also like, man, if you just walk 30 seconds less a mile or something like that, your time would be probably about closer to what you'd like or whatever. So how do we get through that? I had a sort of a twisted anticipation about that day, the marathon day, because that's when I feel my best, when I'm moving, first of all, probably. And I think a lot of people probably agree with that, or at least, after you move or whatever. But I love being out there, and I love the thought of doing meditation, and I'm in and out of that, just the general meditation. But when you're out there doing something like that, that is the ultimate meditation for me, especially if, like I ran the last couple loops just in solo. I mean, literally, mostly, that didn't see hardly anybody. And I just love that shit. I know a lot of people like to run with other people and get up, but to me, it's just an opportunity to, like you said, I mean, their phones, everything is always there. I mean, there's so much information pouring in. It's like everywhere you look, there's a new quote or a new thing or whatever, and there's more and more, because everybody's putting things out, and it's just like, man, I don't even know anymore what kind of things I like half the time. So it's really nice to be sort of forced to go into yourself like that and just be in the breathing and hear the, the muddy splashes running down the hills, or slipping on the leaves, or all that stuff. And just, how do you sort through that? I mean, it's so much easier for me to do that while I'm moving versus just kind of sitting in a place, So it's an opportunity for me. And I hope sometimes that spills into, like, you can go sit with somebody at a table and not feel like you have to fill 100% of the dead air,
Yeah.
Because really, I mean, I was like, sometimes I just don't even know what to talk about on runs, because it's sort of like, oh, that's a beautiful tree. Yeah, that's whatever. Like, you know what I mean? You go through these, it's like, do you have a conversation, or do you try to get the most out of your breath? I don't know. I struggle with that sometimes.
You respect the silence.
Yeah, it's just, and it's really kind of cool. Like you're saying, you and I, if we ever go out and run, it's usually like, whatever the whole time is, maybe like 3 words or whatever, but it's kind of nice and I was like out running with Matt, and we were just kind of on this, our feet were on the same cadence, and you just kind of like embrace that. It's like, over and over and over. And that is enough. Yep. I think a lot of times I don't, it's sort of this, do you want to pass the time, or do you want to be in the time? And I think that's interesting, because, like, you go out and do a 6-hour run or whatever it was on Saturday, and there's this thing about, you want to get it done as fast as possible, but also there's this really cool feeling about just being in it. And if you can just embrace what that is, instead of always, I feel like that's kind of the MO is, a lot of people have jobs where they just check in at 8 or whatever, and they just keep looking at the clock, wanting it to be over. But how do you really kind of be in that moment and just be where you're at? And I think, to me, that's what happened out there. And that's why I love it so much, is it's just a training ground, right? To be where you're at and be okay with that, even though it's not pretty. And it certainly wasn't pretty. It was being able to embrace that ugliness and be okay with it. Because, that's the thing, is that I'll be out there. Well, like you said, you can run or you can walk and it's no big deal. But part of it is sort of like getting the most out of it and, getting it done. And getting it done means probably running as much as you can. So I don't know. It's just a really interesting experiment on so many levels, because, people do try to find the easy way out. I'm not talking about triathletes or people that go to camp or people listening to this podcast. Mostly it's people we know that are, life is always about, why do this? Just do it the easy way. And, like, I don't think there's any learning in that either. I was reading something the other day. It's like kids don't even use pencils anymore, or they don't write. And it's like they're learning on touch pads and things of that nature, and the neuromuscular developments and just weird little things like that. I think that, getting the most out of life means moving and, connecting your body with what's going on in the world, and not just sitting there in your head all day. That's the scary part, man.
Well, and it's what you learn along the way. And I think, we talked about this a lot, and this goes for athletes and people, and, like, it's good for us to go through hard times and make it through. I know a lot of people wish for, hard times they're not fun. I know a lot of people are going through a lot of hard times, and it's hard to watch. It's hard to be a part of. And I think a lot of times we jump sometimes too quick to try to remove that from them, or to compare someone else's hardship or grief to our own. And, because that's our way of kind of, trying to make ourselves feel better about the moment and themselves, and that what that person's going through. And, while I'm always, in support of being there for people, it's also okay to just say, what you're going through really sucks. I don't know how to help you, but once you make it through, you're going to be a changed person. So much tougher, so much stronger, you're so much more resilient, and things are going to get better. And there's really no way to learn those things unless you go through hard times, unless you go through challenging experiences. But I think we're so quick to pull the cord, or or to say when, or stop, or remove. We can't go through hard things. It's too hard. Like, we need hard stuff. It teaches us things. It teaches us more about ourselves than any easy day ever will. 1,000 easy days does nothing but honestly make you softer and lower your ability to be resilient. Hard days, days you gotta find a way to make it through, and you gotta learn something about you, and you have to do something that you think sucks, that you're really uncomfortable with, but you're gonna do it anyway, because you know what? Best fucking foot forward, I'm gonna get it done. That's how we grow. And so I think, like, there's that line of where we try to make things too easy, and it's just making us worse and weaker and softer. You need to work for things. You can't just be handed things. And I think it's really important for athletes and people to figure out what it is they need the most. Do I need an experience like that? Do I need to be more present? Do I need to go to that place? Do I need to work through things? Or am I afraid to ever even go there? Or what might I learn if I do? I just think it'll teach you a lot. It'll teach you so much. I know I talked a lot about this last month, and I've told you this over and over and over again over the course of our friendship. But if I could go back in time and had the choice to remove all the crap that I've gone through and things that have happened to me and that I've had to persevere through, I wouldn't. I would not give it up. No way. Because I don't think I'd be nearly even like close to half of what I even am today. And I'm not I'm not some superhero or superstar by any stretch, but I don't have any faith at all that I would have come to this conclusion or come to this version of me had it just been for, picket fences, rainbows, and easy days. I don't know that I would like the outcome of that, but I like the outcome of what's happened from going through hard stuff. And I think you have to go through things like that and challenge yourself. And I think we're getting away from that a little bit too much in a lot of areas. And making things hard is fine. And I think that's again, it's a skill that we have to. It's a craft, right? That we have to continue to work on and challenge ourselves with, and not be afraid of what's going to happen or how it might look, but just know that it's. Life is about, self-improvement, and that's it. That's it. How are you getting better today? And because to a lot of people now, getting better just means staying the same because I'm avoiding anything challenging enough to make me better. Because what if I fail? Or what if I see that I'm not good enough or fast enough or strong enough? Like, it's to me, it's the equivalent, to use like training as an analogy. The choices we make and the situations we put in, like if you just do 1 hour a day of easy spinning, at some point you're going to stall out and you're never going to get any better because you're no longer going to challenge yourself, or you're going to your increase in performance is going to be so slow and so insignificant you're never going to notice it, that you're going to be detraining. You have to challenge yourself, right? Be either extending the time that you're training, right? Going from an hour to an hour and a half, or putting in intervals. Like we train, we do hard things and make our body adapt, right? Your body's very adaptable. How little do we do to challenge ourselves like that mentally and emotionally? Very few, right? We avoid it at almost at all costs. And do I think there's a certain time and a place for that? 100%. Totally agree. Which is why I think camp is such a great place to do it, because you're surrounded by a great support system and you're seeing people succeed in the exact same thing that you're trying to succeed at, right? Or the area you're trying to tap into and work through, and get a little bit of encouragement, along the way. Because yes, you should have friends and have a good circle and have great things in life, but it's also a pretty good feeling to feel like you can manage and navigate your way through and by being self-reliant. Working through things in your head, working through your emotions, letting things go, doing things you need to do physically, challenging yourself. We all need help in that category, in all those categories, but there's a lot of confidence to see. And everyone knows somebody like that just seems unflappable. Just like, you wonder if they're ever not okay. I'm sure sometimes they are. No one's okay all the time and no one's great all the time, but they just have learned how to navigate it better and work through it and not stick with it and hold on to it as long as possible. And then therefore make them more fearful of doing it in the future. So I think, especially with it being December, off season for a lot of people, find some ways to challenge yourself, and grow in a way that can, again, not only benefit what you're able to do physically in 2024, but what you're able to withstand mentally and emotionally in 2024 as well.
Yeah. Adaptation is everything, and muscle adaptation and building that up and challenging yourself is everything. And, just one quick thing. It was weird. How many run camps have we had? What, 10 or something like that, or 12?
So I think 10. Yeah.
And that back loop behind the lodge when you run up the hills and do the leaves and all that. And I do a lot of video work, and, with our phones now, it's like, oh, grab a picture, but this, out of all those times, I was running back there, and there was a kind of a steep section. I was kind of walking up the hill, and I looked down, and that's the image that really sticks out in my mind about that whole run. It's like how beautiful that was down the gully, like the valley there down by the creek and everything. I was like, this is majestic. And it was like the first time I really feel like I soaked that in. And something about that just sticks in my head. And I know that, doing video and that's sort of what I do and everything, but man, there's so much power in just sort of observing and having the memory, because the memory itself is so much more powerful than being able to look at a picture.
Yeah, I love it. But you gotta stop for the gram.
You got to stop for the gram, yeah.
Nothing wrong with the gram. Just don't do it every time.
I'll have run camp videos coming soon, so you can remember everything.
Soon. Yeah, maybe put that reel on your gram. But yeah, I hope you're able to take something from that and find ways to challenge yourself. And again, don't always look for the easy way out, or the easy route, and find a way to push yourselves and learn things, because that's the way we grow. Even though growing can be uncomfortable, it's how we get to where we want to go and who we want to be, both in training and in life. So take care of yourself. Do that for you. It's always good to be back. And we love you guys and appreciate you listening. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It is our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you're looking for coaching for 2024 and a great team to be a part of, you can click on our coach tab and find the coach that's right for you. If you need anything from Mike, he is available, crushingiron@gmail.com. Or if you need anything from me, c26coach@gmail.com.
All right, buddy. I will see you soon, man.
All right, man. See you, buddy.